The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated silently in the darkness between stars. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. The air buzzed with nervous energy as creatures of all shapes and sizes filled the great council chamber. Chairman Veltar, an ancient being with pale blue skin and eyes that had seen 3 centuries of galactic politics, called the meeting to order. His voice carried the weight of age and wisdom as it echoed through the vast room. Around him sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy, each representing their own species and worlds. Ambassador Kethra stood up from her seat. She was one of the Luminari, a peaceful race that looked like living crystal. Light danced across her translucent body as she spoke. Her voice was beautiful, like music mixed with words. My fellow council members, we must talk about the humans. They are becoming a problem we cannot ignore. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies spreading across space, like drops of blood on a white cloth. In just 15 years since first contact, the humans had built settlements on 47 different worlds. The speed of their expansion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Look at these numbers, Kethra continued, her crystalline finger pointing at the display. No species in recorded history has spread this fast. But that is not what worries me most. Notice where they are building their colonies. The map changed, showing ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy. These were the remains of a civilization that had vanished long ago, leaving behind only broken structures and mysterious warnings. Most intelligent species avoided these places, sensing some unknown danger. But the humans seemed drawn to them like moths to flame. They are studying the precursor sites, Kethra said quietly. They dig through the ruins. They take things. They ask questions that others have learned not to ask. A loud crash filled the chamber as General Thaxmer slammed his massive fist on his table. The Sirach general was a giant reptile covered in dark green scales, with teeth like daggers and claws that could tear through metal. His species had ruled through fear and violence for thousands of years. This is foolish talk, Thaxmer roared, his voice like thunder. These humans are nothing but soft mammals, with weak bodies and primitive weapons. The Sarrak Empire has conquered dozens of species stronger than them. If they become a problem, we will crush them like insects. Other delegates nodded in agreement. The Valkyrie Queen voice, an insect-like creature with compound eyes that sparkled in the light, made a sound like laughter. The general speaks truth. Human flesh burns easily. Their expansion will stop when they meet real warriors. Chairman Veltar raised his hand for silence. His ancient face showed deep concern as he looked around the room. My friends, I have lived for 300 years. I have watched species rise and fall. There is something different about these humans. They learn too fast. They adapt too quickly. They never give up, even when they should. What are you saying? Asked a delegate from the back of the room. I'm saying that every species we have encountered follows certain patterns. They expand to a point, then stop. They develop technology to a level, then plateau. But humans... ... Veltar paused, choosing his words carefully. Humans break every rule we know about how intelligent life develops. The chairman activated another display, showing human technological progress over the past 15 years. The rate of advancement was shocking. In areas like space travel, weapons, and communication, humans had jumped forward by centuries in just a few years. They started with chemical rockets, Veltar explained. Now they have faster-than-light travel that rivals our own. They began with radio signals. Now they use quantum communication networks. Every challenge makes them stronger, not weaker. General Thaxmer snorted with contempt. Old fool, you see shadows where there is only sunlight? Humans are curious. Yes, fast learners, perhaps. But they are still just animals wearing clothes. When they threaten the natural order, we will remind them of their place. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates supported Chairman Veltar's call for action against humanity before they became too powerful. Levers, led by General Thaxmer. And the Valkyrie Queen voice, believed the humans were no real threat to established galactic powers. As the arguments grew heated, none of the alien representatives noticed the tiny devices hidden in the station's walls. Human technology had advanced far enough to create surveillance equipment smaller than dust particles. Every word spoken in the council chamber was being recorded and transmitted across space to Earth. Finally, Chairman Veltar called for a vote. All those in favor of taking preemptive action against human expansion, raise your appendages. Less than a third of the delegates responded. The motion failed. So be it, Veltar said sadly. But I fear we will regret this decision. Mark my words, underestimating humanity will be our greatest mistake. As the council session ended and delegates began to leave, the tiny human listening devices continued their work. Every detail of the meeting was being sent to a secure facility hidden deep beneath the mountains of Korea, where Director Kim Jun sat in darkness, watching his species' fate being decided by creatures who saw them as nothing more than clever animals. The director's face showed no emotion as he watched the alien debate, but his hands clenched into fists as he heard their dismissive laughter and casual threats. When the transmission ended, he spoke to the empty room around him. "You have made your choice," he whispered. "Now we will make ours." 6 months passed after the council meeting. General Thaxmer decided it was time to teach the humans their place in the galaxy. The Sarok Empire would make an example that every species would remember. No upstart mammals would challenge the natural order while he still drew breath. The Sarok War fleet gathered at the edge of their territory. 200 massive warships filled the darkness of space, each one bristling with weapons that had conquered entire worlds. Plasma cannons capable of melting mountains lined their hulls. Quantum torpedoes that could crack planets sat ready in their launch tubes. It was the largest fleet the Sarok had assembled in 50 years. General Thaxmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. The massive reptile gazed at the stars ahead with satisfaction. His scaled hands gripped the command rail as he thought about the easy victory waiting for him. The humans had chosen New Geneva as their target, a small colony world with weak defenses and no military importance. Perfect for sending a message. "Jump to hyperspace," Thaxmer commanded. "Time to remind the galaxy who truly rules here." The fleet vanished in flashes of twisted light, racing across the void toward human space.
Ow.
Within hours, they dropped back into normal space at the edge of the New Geneva system. Thaxmer smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth as he studied the pathetic human defenses on his screens. 3 small orbital platforms circled the planet like lonely sentries. A handful of human patrol ships moved slowly through the outer system, clearly outmatched by even a single Sorak destroyer. Colony itself looked peaceful and unprepared, with civilian ships moving between the planet and nearby mining stations. "This will be easier than crushing eggs," laughed Commander Vexakai Thaxmer, second in command. "Shall we demand their surrender first, or simply destroy them as an example?" "We give them a chance to grovel," Thaxmer decided. "Let them beg for mercy. Then we show the galaxy what happens to species that forget their place." The general opened communications to broadcast across all frequencies. His voice boomed through space, reaching every human ear in the system. "Human colony of New Geneva. This is General Thaxmer of the mighty Sarok Empire. You have 1 standard hour to surrender completely and acknowledge Sarok dominance over this sector. Refuse, and we will turn your world into ash and memory." The response came quickly from a human ship called the Indomitable. A calm female voice answered the Sarok threat without fear or panic.
Thaxmer.
"This is Admiral Park Hyun of the United Earth Fleet. You will reverse course and leave this system immediately. This is your only warning." Silence filled the Sarok bridge for a moment. Then explosive laughter erupted from every throat. The idea that these soft mammals would threaten the mighty Sarok Empire was beyond belief. Even their name was wrong. Admiral Park was clearly a male human name, yet the voice sounded female. These creatures could not even get their own identities correct. "Did you hear that?" Thaxmer gasped between fits of laughter. "They warn us. 200 warships, and they give us warnings." His amusement spread across the fleet communications. with thousands of Sarok warriors joining in the mockery. Again, the attack Thax_Moore ordered, wiping tears from his reptilian eyes. Show them the price of defying their betters. The assault began with overwhelming firepower. Quantum torpedoes streaked across space like falling stars aimed at the three orbital platforms. Plasma beams lanced out from the Sarok ships, targeting the scattered human patrol vessels. The space around New Geneva lit up with explosions as the platforms died in brilliant flashes. But something felt wrong. The explosions were too clean, too perfectly timed. As debris fell toward the planet, Thaxmer noticed that the human ships were not running in panic as expected. Instead, they seemed to be moving in careful patterns, almost like they were following a planned retreat. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, his voice uncertain, "I am reading strange energy signatures from the asteroid field near the planet. The patterns do not match natural rock formations." Before Thaxmer could respond, the trap revealed itself. The destroyed orbital platforms had been empty shells, sophisticated decoys filled with sensor equipment and transmitters. The real defenses emerged from hiding places throughout the system. Massive railgun installations rose from asteroids that had appeared empty on every Sarok scan. Human ships materialized around the fleet, their hulls bending light in ways that made them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. The space that had seemed empty suddenly filled with deadly surprises. The first kinetic rounds hit the Sarok fleet before anyone could react, unlike energy weapons that could be deflected by shields. These metal projectiles moved at incredible speeds and punched through armor like paper. The leading Sarok destroyers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by impacts that released more energy than nuclear bombs. "Shields up, return fire." Thaxmer roared, but his communications were being jammed by interference patterns his technicians had never encountered. Individual ships could not coordinate their responses. The careful formation that made the Sarok fleet so powerful became a liability as ships collided while trying to maneuver. The battle lasted 3 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first minutes. Sarok weapons, designed to fight enemies who used similar technology, proved useless against human tactics. Their sensors could not track ships that bent light around themselves. Their shields failed against projectiles that struck from impossible angles as his flagship began to die around him. Thax_Moore received one final transmission from Admiral Park. Her voice was still calm, still polite, but now carried an edge of cold steel. "Tell your council what happened here, General. Tell them humanity remembers its friends, ... and its enemies. Tell them we offered you peace, and you chose war. The consequences are yours to bear." Of the 200 ships that had entered the system with such confidence, fewer than 30 escaped to carry news of the disaster back to Sarok space. As they limped away with damaged engines and wounded pride, they left behind the scattered remains of what had once been considered the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The humans had sent their message, and the galaxy would remember it. The Velkari hive mind studied the reports of the Sarok defeat with cold calculation. Queen Mother Zixara connected her consciousness to thousands of her children across the galaxy, analyzing every detail of the battle. The reptiles had failed because they used brute force like primitive beasts. The Velkari were different. They were patient. They were clever. They would succeed where others had failed. The humans defeated ships and weapons. The Queen Mother whispered to her collective consciousness, "But they cannot defeat ideas planted in their own minds. We will conquer them from within." The Velkari were masters of infiltration. Their insect-like bodies could be surgically altered to look like almost any species. More importantly, their hive mind allowed perfect coordination between agents scattered across the galaxy, where other species sent spies who might be caught or turned. The Velkari sent extensions of their own collective will. Within weeks, Velkari agents began appearing throughout human space. They took the identities of researchers, traders, and colonists. Their false documents were perfect. Their knowledge of human behavior came from years of careful study. To any observer, they were simply humans going about their daily lives. On The frontier world of Kepler 44b, Dr. Li Min worked late in his research laboratory. The young Zen archaeologist had spent months studying artifacts from ancient precursor ruins. His latest discovery was exciting energy crystals that seemed to respond to specific frequency patterns. If he could understand how they worked, humanity might gain access to power sources beyond current technology. What Dr. Li did not know was that his research assistant had been replaced 3 months earlier. The real Dr. Elena Park had died in what appeared to be a transport accident. It's the woman who now worked beside him every day, who brought him coffee during long nights and helped analyze data, was actually Valkyrie agent Zikra. Zikra had studied the real Elena Park for weeks before replacing her. She knew Elena's habits, her speech patterns, even her childhood memories gathered from personal files. The human brain was simple compared to the Valkyrie collective consciousness. Fooling one isolated mind should be effortless. The crystal resonance is fascinating, Zikra said, leaning over Dr. Li's shoulder to examine his latest readings. Her voice carried Elena's exact tone and accent. Have you considered trying harmonic frequencies in the upper range? Dr. Li smiled, grateful for her insight. Excellent idea, Elena. I knew there was a reason I requested you for this project. He began adjusting his equipment, unaware that every detail of his work was being transmitted directly to the Valkyrie homeworld through quantum communication. Channels hidden in his assistant's modified biology. The operation expanded across dozens of human worlds. Valkyrie agents infiltrated universities, research stations, military bases, and government facilities. They became trusted colleagues, close friends, even romantic partners. Each agent fed information back to the hive mind, building a complete picture of human capabilities and weaknesses. Queen Mother Zixara was pleased with the intelligence flowing to her throne world. Human technology was impressive, but not beyond Valkyrie understanding. Their military preparations followed predictable patterns. Most importantly, their leaders seemed completely unaware of the infiltration taking place around them. They are isolated minds, the Queen Mother told her collective. Each human thinks only their own thoughts, knows only what they have personally learned. They cannot imagine a consciousness that spans star systems. This weakness will be their downfall. The Valkyrie plan was elegant in its simplicity. At a predetermined moment, all agents would strike simultaneously. Key human leaders would be eliminated. Critical research facilities would be destroyed or captured. The precursor artifacts that seemed so important to human expansion would fall into Valkyrie control. Humanity would wake up to find their civilization crippled by their own trusted friends. The day of the operation arrived, 6 months after the first agents had been placed. Queen Mother Zixara coordinated the assault from her crystalline palace, her consciousness flowing through quantum channels to direct hundreds of agents simultaneously. Each operative received their final orders and moved toward their targets. Zikra entered Dr. Li's laboratory, as she had done every day for months. But this time, she carried concealed weapons and a device designed to steal the precursor crystals he had been studying. The human was alone, working late as usual. Perfect conditions for a quick elimination and data theft. Good evening, Doctor. Li, she said, approaching his workstation. What? Working late again, I see. Dr. Li looked up from his equipment and smiled. But something in his expression made Zikra pause. There was no surprise in his eyes. No warmth, just calm recognition. Good evening, Agent Zikra, he replied, using her real name. We have been expecting you. Shock paralyzed the Valkyrie agent. Humans were not supposed to know that name. Her cover identity was perfect. The hive mind's intelligence gathering had been flawless. How could this soft-minded mammal possibly know her true identity? Surprised? Dr. Li continued, standing slowly from his chair. You should not be. Did you really think we would not notice patterns in the data you were stealing? Did you imagine we could not track the quantum communications you thought were so cleverly hidden across human space? The same scene played out on dozens of worlds? Every Valkyrie agent found themselves facing humans who had known their true identities for months. The technology they had stolen was designed to fail catastrophically when activated. The precursor sites they had targeted were empty. The real artifacts moved to secure locations long ago, the coordinated counterstrike eliminated, every Valkyrie operative simultaneously. Advanced human technology severed the quantum links connecting the agents to their hive mind so completely that Queen Mother Zixara felt each death like a physical wound. For the first time in her species' history, the collective consciousness experienced true isolation. A single message reached the Valkyrie homeworld as the operation collapsed. Captain Cho's son, a mild-mannered intelligence officer who had coordinated the counterintelligence operation, spoke directly to the Queen Mother through channels the Valkyrie had thought were secure. "Your children learned much about us during their time here," he said politely. "They learned much more about you. Perhaps next time you will consider asking instead of taking." The transmission ended, leaving Queen Mother Zixara alone with the realization that humanity had played them perfectly. From the very beginning, Chairman Veltar sat alone in his private chambers aboard Nexus Prime, staring at the reports scattered across his desk. The documents told a story that chilled his ancient blood. First, the Saurak military might had been crushed in 3 hours. Then the Valkyrie intelligence network had been destroyed so completely that their Queen Mother still refused to leave her throne world. 2 of the galaxy's most powerful species had tried to stop humanity, and both had failed utterly. The old Zephyrian's hands trembled as he reached for his communicator. In 3 centuries of life, he had never felt such fear for the future of galactic civilization. Every instinct developed over decades of political survival screamed that humanity represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. But his warnings had been ignored, dismissed as the paranoid ravings of an aged mind. Now he faced a terrible choice: watch the established order crumble as more species challenged humanity and met the same fate, or try something that went against every principle of Zephyrian diplomacy. He would have to ask for help from the one species that might still be able to reach the humans through peaceful means. Ambassador Kethra received Veltar's message with surprise. The Luminari had maintained neutrality throughout the recent conflicts, believing that understanding between species was always possible with proper mediation. Her crystalline features showed concern as she reviewed the chairman's desperate plea. "You wish me to arrange negotiations?" she asked during their private meeting. "After what has happened to those who opposed humanity, you believe they will listen to reason?" Veltar's aged face showed the weight of his fears. "Ambassador, you are the only leader left who has not taken sides in this conflict. The humans may trust your people's reputation for peaceful intentions. If there is any hope of preventing further bloodshed, it lies with Luminari mediation." Kethra agreed, though she harbored private doubts about the chances of success. Her people's ship, Harmony's Light, would provide neutral ground for the meeting. Its crystalline hull generated patterns of light designed to promote calm thinking and peaceful discussion. If any environment could encourage understanding between species, it would be there. The meeting was arranged for neutral space, far from any military installations or colonies. Veltar came with only a small diplomatic escort prepared to offer humanity almost anything in exchange for assurance that their expansion would not threaten existing galactic communities. He brought territorial concessions, technology-sharing agreements, and trade privileges that would make humans wealthy beyond imagination. Admiral Beiji arrived with an equally small delegation aboard, a human ship that seemed almost alive in the way it moved through space. Veltar immediately noticed something different about these humans compared to the warriors who had defeated the Saurak or the intelligence officers who had outmaneuvered the Valkyrie. These humans carried themselves with absolute confidence, but it was not the confidence of military victory. It was something deeper, more unsettling. Ambassador Kethra welcomed both parties aboard her vessel with her characteristic grace. The meeting chamber filled with gentle, shifting patterns of light that encouraged honest communication. We gather. In the spirit of mutual understanding, she began, "seeking a path forward that benefits all citizens of our galaxy." Veltar leaned forward in his chair, his ancient hands clasped tightly together. "Admiral Bay, I speak for many species when I say that humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy concerns us deeply. We do not wish to repeat the conflicts that have already cost so many lives. Surely we can find some arrangement that allows for peaceful coexistence." Admiral Bay studied the chairman for a long moment before responding. Her voice was calm but carried undertones that made Veltar's skin crawl. "Chairman, I appreciate your desire for peace. However, I believe you fundamentally misunderstand our motivations and our actions." Dr. Song-Woo, a human scientist who had remained silent until now, activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. The projection showed ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy, the same precursor sites that had appeared in intelligence reports for months. But now the display revealed patterns that Veltar had never seen before. "We have been studying these ruins for 15 years, Dr. Song explained with scholarly precision. Every site tells the same story. It's a thriving galactic civilization that suddenly vanished, leaving behind only warnings about something they called the silence between stars." The hologram shifted to show translated precursor texts, their meaning clear despite the alien script. Warnings about entities that existed in dark matter between galaxies, descriptions of cyclical destruction that occurred every few million years, records of desperate preparations that had ultimately failed to save the ancient civilization. "Your council's established galactic order is not natural development," Dr. Song continued, his words dropping into the chamber like stones into still water. "You are the descendants of refugees who survived the last harvest, scattered remnants, who forgot their own history over millions of years of rebuilding." Veltar felt the blood drain from his face as the implications became clear. The display showed astronomical data spanning eons, revealing a pattern of destruction and renewal that had repeated itself multiple times throughout galactic history. Each cycle began with scattered survivors slowly rebuilding civilization, only to be harvested again when they've reached sufficient technological development. "The entities exist in dark matter structures between galaxies," Admiral Bay explained with terrifying calm. "They awaken approximately every 4.7 million years to harvest spacefaring civilizations. According to our calculations, they are already stirring. We estimate 17 cycles remain before they arrive." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Kethra's crystalline form had stopped generating its peaceful light patterns, her entire being focused on processing this revelation. Veltar stared at the holographic evidence, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. "We have not been expanding aggressively," Admiral Bay said finally. "We have been following precursor star charts, gathering the scattered pieces of ancient defensive technology. Every colony, every research station, every move we have made has been preparation for a war that most of the galaxy has forgotten was coming." The truth hung in the air between them like a sword about to fall. Humanity had not been conquering. They had been trying to save everyone. News of the precursor revelation spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within days, every species knew the truth that had been hidden for millions of years, the ancient warnings, the cyclical destruction, the approaching threat from dark space. It changed everything. Some species, like the Luminari, immediately offered to help humanity prepare for the coming harvest. Others retreated to their homeworlds, hoping that hiding would keep them safe. But the coalition of wounded pride could not accept this new reality. Led by the surviving Sarok commanders and backed by the desperate Velkari, 12 species decided that if they could not control humanity, they would destroy it completely. They refused to believe in this imaginary threat that seemed designed to justify human dominance over the entire galaxy. Commander Vexstar, who had taken command after General Thaxmer's death, assembled the largest military fleet in galactic history. Over 10,000 warships gathered at the edge of Sarok space, representing the combined military might of a dozen civilizations. The ships came from every corner of the galaxy: Sarok dreadnoughts, Velkari swarm fighters, crystalline Nexari, battle cruisers, and metal-hulled Corvin destroyers. "Today we end this human deception," Vexstar broadcast to the massive fleet. "Today we show the galaxy that established powers will not be displaced by clever mammals and their fabricated threats. We go to Sol System to finish what should have been done years ago." The Armada jumped to hyperspace, their combined passage creating ripples in space-time that could be detected from neighboring star systems. It was a force capable of sterilizing entire worlds, led by commanders who had convinced themselves that destroying humanity would restore the natural order of galactic civilization. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sol System, expecting to find humanity's birthworld protected by desperate defensive positions. The Coalition had prepared for massive battles around Earth's orbital stations, for desperate resistance from human colonies throughout the system, for the kind of last stand that would become legendary. Instead, they found nothing. The system appeared completely empty. No orbital defense platforms surrounded Earth. No human fleets patrolled the space between planets. Even the asteroid mining stations that intelligence reports had described were gone, leaving only empty rock floating in the void. Long-range sensors detected no signs of industrial activity, no communication signals, no energy signatures that would indicate a living civilization. Earth itself looked dead from space. The planet's cities showed no lights during the night cycle. No ships moved between the surface and orbit. The electromagnetic spectrum was silent where it should have been, filled with the chatter of billions of human voices. It was as if the entire species had simply vanished. Commander Vexstar ordered his fleet to spread out and search every corner of the system. They must be hiding, he growled to his staff. No species abandons their homeworld without a fight. Find them. But as ships began their detailed search, something strange started happening. Scout vessels reported brief contact with unidentified objects that disappeared before targeting systems could lock onto them. Patrol groups sent to investigate the outer planets simply stopped responding to communications. Within hours, entire squadrons were vanishing without sending distress signals. The massive fleet that had entered Sol System with such confidence began to shrink. Ships disappeared one by one, their crews never knowing what had taken them. Fear spread through the remaining vessels as commanders realized they were fighting an enemy they could not see or understand. Commander Vexstar watched his fleet dissolve around him, helpless to stop whatever was happening to his ship's own. Flagship sensors detected strange readings throughout the system, energy patterns that existed in dimensions beyond normal space, gravitational anomalies that suggested the presence of massive objects that somehow remained invisible. The truth came as a final transmission that reached every surviving ship simultaneously. Admiral Bay's voice echoed through space, but it no longer came from any physical location. It seemed to arrive from everywhere and nowhere, speaking from dimensions beyond normal reality. Commander Vexstar, you came here to destroy us. But we are no longer here to be destroyed. The transmission included a holographic message that appeared on every ship's bridge. Admiral Bay stood in what looked like a command center, but the walls seemed to be made of flowing energy rather than solid matter. Behind her, other humans moved through spaces that hurt to look at directly, their forms shifting between dimensions. We offered cooperation, Admiral Bay continued, her voice carrying sadness rather than anger. We offered shared knowledge and joint preparation for the threat that approaches. But you chose fear over unity, conquest over survival. So we have chosen transcendence over destruction. The hologram showed images of precursor technology that humanity had spent years gathering and studying. But these were not weapons or shields. They were gateways to higher dimensions. Methods of existing beyond the physical universe where the silence between stars could not reach. We have not abandoned you, Admiral Bay's voice continued. We have become your guardians. When the harvest comes, we will stand between you and the darkness. But the choice of whether to prepare or perish belongs to you. The transmission ended, with coordinates to a precursor archive containing everything the ancient civilization had learned about surviving the coming threat. As the data reached the Coalition ships, they began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. Humanity had not conquered their enemies through superior weapons or clever tactics. They had transcended physical existence entirely, becoming something beyond the reach of conventional warfare. The species that had seemed like a threat to galactic civilization had actually been trying to save it. As the surviving ships limped away from Sol System, Chairman Veltar received reports from across the galaxy. The precursor archives were being opened, their warnings finally being taken seriously. Species that had spent millennia fighting each other began working together to prepare for the real enemy approaching from dark space. Somewhere in the quantum foam between realities, humanity watched and waited. They had become guardians of the galaxy they had once been part of, protectors standing ready to face the silence between stars when it finally arrived. The species that had mocked the Council's fear had learned too late that humanity had been trying to save them all along. In 17 cycles, the ancient enemy would return. The galaxy's fate now rested with those who had chosen pride over wisdom, never realizing that their salvation had been offered freely by the very species they had tried to destroy.